Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Adam Hill. I work for Coconut, and today I'm going to be showing you how to use our Coconut accounting and bookkeeping software if you are a sole trader. To do this, I'm going to cover how to sign up to the app. I'll show you a walkthrough of the onboarding screens. I'll show you how to connect your bank account so that any transactions pull through to the software automatically without the need for any upload or manual entry like you might have with other software. Show you how to raise sales invoices and send them to your customers or your clients. We'll look at how to scan a receipt, which is going to be really important to help ensure digital record keeping. We can then categorize a transaction, which is essentially telling Coconut what that money was spent on. And finally, I'm going to show you how to take that information and use it to prepare and submit your self-assessment tax return. As I run through this, if you do have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat box or email them to support@getcoconut.com. Now, just before I get going here, Coconut is available as an app, which is what I'm going to be doing my demonstration on here today, but you can also log into your account in browser via your desktop to use the software. The functionality is essentially the same. The format may look slightly different depending on which method you're using, but you can do the same things. The only real difference to note is that once you're happy that you've entered all of your transactions and you're ready to complete your tax return, Coconut can actually link you to another in-browser software called Go Simple Tax, which provides a user-friendly way to complete your self-assessment tax return. The benefit of this is that all of your self-employment information, like your turnover, your expenditure, your profit, it's all going to be transferred automatically and entered correctly on the tax return ready for submission. So this is a feature that you might want to use to save time and ensure accuracy. But to do so, you'll need to switch to the browser version, which I'm going to show you when we get to that point. So let's start with how to actually sign up to the app. I'm going to assume that you've managed to download the app from the App Store, and I'm going to start by entering my email address. I'm then going to select the type of business structure that best describes mine. So if you're running your own business as a tradesperson, or you're offering consultancy or professional services, then it's highly likely that you're going to be a sole trader, and that is a form of self-employment, and that's going to be the top option, which I'm going to select for my business. Again, you may also be using Coconut because you own a rental property or a rental property business, which is another popular use of the software, and there is an option for that in this setup. But today I'm focusing on my self-employment, so I'm going to continue to the next page and then simply enter my personal information as I'm being asked for it. The mobile number is requested for security purposes, so you're going to receive a confirmation code via text, which you'll have to enter to the app, and then you'll set your own 5-digit access code, which you can use to access the app, or you can always link your usual biometric options like fingerprints. The final security step is to agree to the terms of service, and now we're moving past the usual security settings, and we just need to provide a bit more information about the business. Now, I provide video editing services, so I'll try to find the best match from the list, and that would probably be freelance professional. Now, don't overthink this too much. If there isn't a good match for your trade, then just go with other self-employed, which is at the bottom. Now, the next screen allows you to link your bank account or your credit cards, which is really useful. So there would be an automatic feed pulling bank transactions or credit card transactions into the software, which you can then categorize accordingly. You could do it at this point. However, you can also do it after the initial setup. So I'm going to click select your bank, and then you can see here in the narrative, you're able to link any of the main high street banks plus all your credit cards as well. Just select add account and then search for your bank or select from the list. Allow access to the details listed on screen. Then you'll need to log into your banking app and give permission to Coconut using the instructions below and by entering the access code provided. That green tick means the connection has now been made. There's another confirmation, and if I head back into the app, here I can see my one linked bank account. Just select the account to finish the setup. And if you have a business bank account, a dedicated business bank account, then that makes things nice and easy, as the app will try to categorize all of the transactions accordingly. If you have a personal bank account that you use for a mix of business and personal use, then the app would default each transaction to private, and then you would just need to overwrite this for business transactions. I'm going to go with the second option, and that is then the setup of the bank account and the feed complete. The feed is now refreshing, and it is now pulled through all of the bank transactions ready to be categorized. So if I head to the transactions tab and make sure that I have my Barclays bank account selected at the top, then that's going to generate the list of transactions. Where the amount is showing in black, that means that I haven't actually categorized that transaction yet. I haven't told Coconut if it's business or personal, and if it is business, what it related to. So if I select a transaction, then the default for me is that Coconut is going to assume that it's a personal expense and not business related because of the setting that I chose on the setup of this account. If this was a business expense, I would just switch this from personal to business. It's recognized that this is income, but if I want to amend the income category, I can just click on income and then select from here. If I then head back to my bank feed and look for an expense, we can do exactly the same by selecting the transaction, waiting for Coconut to suggest a category. If I don't agree, again, I can just go in and overwrite this. And the good thing is the software is going to learn from how you've categorized previous transactions so that the next time it ends up getting it right. You can also see that 22 similar transactions have been identified. So if I wanted to bulk process these transactions, I could just select all 22 or maybe just a handful of these and then categorize them all to the same place in one go. If I have receipts or invoices or some kind of documentation, then I can attach these from here. And I can also add a note if I want to provide more detail. I'm then going to switch across to business transactions, so you can see that this expense is now being picked up in my figures. So until you actually categorize the transactions, it's just going to sit in the bank account and it's not going to appear in your profit or loss calculation. So that is it really in terms of the initial setup anyway. We're actually into the app now. You can see down the bottom we have access to the different tabs, the home tab where we are. We got shortcuts at the bottom there. Then we have the transactions tab. We have the invoices tab, a taxes tab, which is essentially a live feed of your tax liability or your tax position from self-employment. And then finally, we've got more, which is where we'll do our business setup, plus all of the usual account settings and support functions. I'm going to start from the more tab, and I'm going to click on business profile because it makes sense before we get going with categorizing transactions and raising invoices to actually provide all of the information we can about my business. And the first thing I have the option to do is upload a logo that will then display on any invoices that we send to clients or to customers. So I'm going to click on here. Just note that with most of these steps, you're usually going to have the option of I need help or support. down at the bottom, which will link you across to the Coconut support pages and articles. I'm not going to read through all of this, but it is handy to have it there should you need it. You can also open up the support feature, so you can raise a ticket if you're having issues, or use the chat function to speak to someone directly from Coconut. The support team, by the way, have 30+ years of experience and are on hand to help you with any questions that you do have about the app. But I'm happy with this one, that it is a straightforward process, so I'm going to head into my image library and select a suitable logo for my invoices. I'm provided with a little preview of how this is going to look on the invoice. I'm happy with this, so I'm going to save and then I'm going to finish, and I'll move on to the next step, which is to add my business name. Again, a lot of this information is actually optional. As a sole trader, you might just trade in your own name. I might just trade as Adam Hill. Alternatively, you might have a trading name. In my case, this would be Adam Hill Video Editing. So I'm going to pop that in here. My business address can be added below, which might be my home address, or it could be a dedicated space depending on the type of business that you are running. There is an option to provide a website if your business has one. And then finally at the bottom, I just need to provide a brief description of what my business actually does. Now, this doesn't need to be hugely detailed. Video editing, consultancy, plumbing and electrics would all be suitable. And that is really our business profile fully set up then. Next, let's just check our personal profile. Now, I did skip over this one initially, purely because we've actually provided this information during the account setup. So you may not need to enter any additional information in here. There is an option for a preferred name, but given my first name is Adam, and my preferred name is Adam, I could equally just leave this one blank. The next step is income streams. So typically you would use this one where you have more than one trade, more than one self-employment. At the moment, I just have Adam Hill, but sometimes you might have a completely different trade that isn't related, and you may need to report those separately. So I can select add income stream, and then if I provided gardening services at the weekends, I can enter that here. Then as I raise invoices and as I categorize expenses, I'll be able to assign it to a different income stream. I want to leave Adam Hill as my main income source. If you just have the one trade, then obviously you don't need to worry about this step. You'll just have that one income stream. And then we have your plan, which will show you the details of your subscription, any options to upgrade your plan. If you have just signed up, at the time of making this video, that triggers a free trial. So I'm being informed at the top of this page that I'll need to add my payment method before the end of that free trial to maintain my access. So you may see that in here. Bank connections, well, we've already linked a bank account, but if you needed to add more bank accounts or credit cards, this is where you would come to do that. And then you've got the ability to share access with your accountant. So if you do have someone who helps you maintain your numbers, then you just need their email address in order to share a link, which will give them access to view transactions and amend the categorization of those transactions. Just note that this is actually a feature that has to be done via the web browser. So if I follow the link, I'm just going to get directed to the guidance page, essentially. We also have access to general account settings in here, and then access to the support function, which I've mentioned, just in case you have any issues or questions. You can speak directly to someone in the team, and of course, access all of the usual support articles. And that is actually the More tab covered in full. I'm now going to look at the Transactions tab, where I've already linked my bank account and analysed some transactions, but I'm now going to show you how to add manual adjustments. Because although it makes things a lot easier if you have a dedicated business bank account with all your transactions going through, in reality, that isn't always possible. You might have to pay something in cash, for example, or out of a personal bank account. That isn't going to be linked to Coconut. So from within the Transactions tab, I can click on the plus symbol in the top right, and then I can make a manual adjustment. First, let's add some income, so a payment in. Let's say I've received £500 and I'm going to date this the 1st of January. Let's give this transaction some narrative too, and then I can create the adjustment. If needed, I can also add an attachment or a note, but I'm going to leave that one without either. Then I'm going to create another adjustment, but this time it's going to be a payment out. So I'm spending money. This time it could be I've had to pay for some parking and I've had to do that in cash. So there you see, those are manual adjustments, and they can be used for any transactions that take place outside of your linked bank accounts. There's also a search feature in here. Of course, with 2 transactions, there's not really much need for it. But you can imagine once you have hundreds or sometimes thousands of transactions going through here, that would save you searching through, a shoebox of receipts to try and find the one that you want. Speaking of receipts, we also have the ability to actually take pictures and images of receipts and invoices and save those to Coconut, which will ensure that you meet HMRC's record keeping requirements and allows you to capture evidence of transactions when they happen. I'm going to add a value of £5, even though this receipt was actually for a slightly different amount. And then I'm going to save. Now, at the moment, that £5 receipt hasn't actually impacted my numbers. I've just saved an image of it. It's not going to be showing as an expense, and that's because I need to match it with an actual transaction. So in this case, I'm going to do another manual adjustment, and then I'm going to find that receipt from my saved receipt list. The next tab is the invoice tab, which will be used for raising and sending sales invoices to your customers and your clients. I haven't raised any invoices yet. The 0 value invoices you can see on screen, these are just examples that sort of populate when you first sign up to Coconut to show you how it works. But I want to actually start raising my own sales invoice. So now I'm going to select Create Invoice. I can search for a client's name in here. This is just pulling information from Companies House. So if your client happens to be a limited company, then this is going to be handy. It's going to auto-populate their address based on their name, although of course you can also overwrite this manually if you need to. Invoice numbering is sequential. You can also select terms of payment, which will then show on the invoice, whether that's 7 days, 30 days, you can add that on there. And I then want to break the invoice down by item to show what I'm actually invoicing for. In this case, some tax advice, and then a separate charge for a software subscription. And once I'm happy with all the details, I'm going to select Next. I've just hidden my bank details here, but typically when you've got a linked bank account, those details will pull through to the invoice so that the customer can make payment to you directly. I could also allow payment via PayPal if you have a PayPal account, if I want to do that. I can also add a note or a footer to the bottom of the invoice. That invoice can then be emailed directly to the client from the app. Amend the text of the email if you want to personalize anything for that client, or you can just use a sort of template narrative. I'm going to send a copy to myself, and it's always a good idea to preview your email to make sure you're happy with how it looks before it goes out. And that's it. Email sent to the client with the invoice attached. Now, let's say that invoice I just raised has then been settled via an alternate means. I would then select the invoice, select Mark as paid, and choose the means that the invoice was settled. In this case, I'll just go with cash. From the home screen, you can then see from that visual aid that I'm now starting to build up a picture of how my business has been trading over the past few months, with some income, less my business expenses, which is going to leave me with a profit figure each month. Now, the final step within the app is to then see how this creates a tax liability over time. But because I've got so few transactions at this point, I'm not going to have generated enough profit to actually generate a tax liability. So I'm going to hit pause here. I'm going to go back to my bank feed, and I'm actually going to categorize a bunch of my bank transactions so that we can then see how that generates a tax liability. Now I've done that, you can see that I've got a lot more income and expenditure showing as I scroll back through the months. And now, if I move to the taxes tab, you're going to see a live summary of my estimated tax position. Just note, it is only an estimate. It makes a few assumptions like a standard personal allowance and no other income. Of course, if you have income from other sources, then you would need to put tax aside for that too. But if self-employment is your only source of income, then this is going to give you a good indication at least of how much you should be setting aside throughout the year rather than waiting until the last minute. I can drill down into each of these figures to see the transactions that are making it up. So the idea would be that you keep an eye on this tab throughout the year and you make sure that you're putting that tax liability away. This tab is also going to become more and more useful from April 2026 if you're having to follow the new Making Tax Digital for Income tax rules, which will require certain self-employed individuals and others to file quarterly returns to HMRC rather than the previously accepted annual self-assessment tax return. Those individuals will need to ensure they keep digital records and make their quarterly submissions via compatible software. Our Coconut platform has you covered for all of these requirements, and the live tax calculation will help ensure you know your liability ahead of making those submissions. That was a basic overview of the Coconut app. Just to finish here, let's switch across to the web browser version of Coconut. Right, now I've logged in here using exactly the same credentials that I used to log into the app. And you can see that the layout is, well, slightly different. You may actually prefer it this way, and there's nothing stopping you from using this version for your day-to-day posting. It's just down to which version you prefer. But the features, for the most part, are the same. I have my two income streams. You can then see my income and my expenditure breakdown below that. We have a receipts tab, bank feed, invoices. The one that is new though is the self-assessment tab, and this is also where you'll do your MTD submissions, your Making Tax Digital submissions, when that goes live from April 2026. So once I'm happy that I've categorized all of my business transactions for a tax year and I've made any manual adjustments that are required, I would then want to take these numbers and enter them to a self-assessment tax return. To do this, I would just click on self-assessment. I would look for the tax report SA103S, which is the page from the tax return for self-employment. I'll select my income stream. In this case, let's go with Adam Hill. And I'm going to select the tax year 24-25 in this case. I'm then going to click on View, and I'm presented with my results in the same format as the entries that can be made on the SA103. So at this point, I have two options. The first is to take this information from here and input it into another piece of software, or possibly log into your government gateway and transfer these numbers into the corresponding field on the tax return. And the good news with that is you're going to find a field for your turnover, you're going to find a field for car, van and travel expenses. There'll be one for accountancy, legal and other professional fees. So it should be a straightforward transfer. Or to make things even easier, I can send this information to Go Simple Tax down here. I can then close out of this screen and then switch across to Go Simple Tax. And what you're going to find is that the self-employed pages, the SA103 of my tax return, has already been populated correctly using that information from Coconut. So you don't have to worry about entering a figure in the wrong box. You don't have to worry about entering the wrong figure.
this is all done automatically. All I would then need to do is add any other income sources like employment or rental income, continue through the tailoring questions of the tax return, and then submit this to HMRC. And that's all going to be done in browser using the link between Coconut and Go Simple Tax.
That is the end of today's webinar. I hope you found that useful and it helps you to start using Coconut from today. There's a link to sign up below, or you can just visit getcoconut.com. If you have any questions, again, email them to support@getcoconut.com. Thank you for watching.